everything you believe about time might be wrong? What if the real source of your problems isn't what you think it is? It is said that time can be an enemy or a friend. Some days, time seems to stretch
On and on forever.
and other days seem to go by in an instant. We use words like seconds, minutes, hours, days, weeks, months, years to describe and measure time, but what if time isn't what we think it is? Today we're exploring how our experience of time can become a kind of prison and why questioning it could change more of the problems in your life than you realize. Welcome to the Blessed Heliograph, a space for reflection, perspective, and honest exploration. To be honest, I'm glad you're here, and I hope your day feels blessed. Let's get into it. We experience and learn about the world by using specialized organs to absorb five senses: touch, taste, hearing, sight, and smell. All five of these senses are then interpreted through electrical signals to the brain. To help make sense of the constant input of information from these five senses, the brain connects these different signals into groups, or mental constructs. Let me give you an example of how this is experienced. If I was to ask you to think of an orange right now, what comes to mind? For a lot of people, most likely what came to mind first was simply the colour orange, or perhaps the circular shape of an orange. Others may have focused more on the citrus smell, the sounds that are made when an orange is peeled, maybe the specific taste or texture. Each person builds their own unique mental constructs dependent on how they relate to their senses and their own personal experiences. If you found yourself thinking of what an orange sounds like, you might favour auditory signals, whereas people thinking of colours and shapes may be more likely to be visually focused. People with less life experience tend to be seen as more open-minded because these mental constructs are still in the process of being constructed, and then reconstructed again as more life experience is factored in. As people gain life experience, the foundation of these mental constructs often become more established as less and less new experiences conflict with these existing mental constructs. To use the example of oranges again, a person who believes that all oranges are the colour orange may not have actually seen or heard about a yellow, green, or blood orange before. The existing mental construct remains solid only until new experiences that contradict those beliefs force a reconstruction. This illustrates how inductive reasoning is used when building mental constructs, as well as highlights the potential for inaccuracy. It's a seemingly small example, but its implications are pretty big. It means that we are only ever one new experience away from potentially needing to completely change the way we perceive everything. That includes our perception of the concept of time. Just as our mental constructs of oranges can shift with new experiences, our understanding of bigger concepts like time can also be shaped and reshaped. The general consensus is that time is linear and moves in a straight line. The past, the present, then the future. The start, the middle, then the end. But if our mental constructs shape everything we perceive, could our experience of time be more fluid than we currently realize? Before we continue this exploration of time, let's take a moment to quickly discuss another concept: skepticism, which is a philosophical approach and attitude of doubt toward the possibility of obtaining absolute certainty or true knowledge. I understand this may seem a bit off topic, but stay with me because I promise this will all come together by the end. There are many different types of skepticism, but in general terms, it is based on the idea that no matter how certain we are about any given belief, we could still be wrong about it. Radical skepticism suggests we can never be entirely sure about anything, and here are 3 general arguments to support that. 1. The dream argument. It is impossible to distinguish with absolute certainty if we are ever truly awake or just experiencing an extremely vivid dream. 2. The evil demon argument. It is possible that a powerful malicious being could be tricking our minds and making us believe in a reality that does not exist. 3. Sensory illusion argument. Our senses can sometimes deceive us. If you've ever misheard a song lyric, seen an optical illusion, or simply watched a straight object seem to bend in the water, then you've already experienced this for yourself. Taken to its extreme, skepticism appears self-defeating. If we cannot know anything, then we cannot know that we cannot know anything. This, of course, can leave us in the difficult position of feeling as though we must then choose between rejecting this idea entirely so that we don't have to face this uncertainty, or accepting that everything we believe in might be wrong and that we will never truly know anything. But these are not the only options. We'll come back to this soon. Have you ever noticed how something scheduled weeks from now can already change how you feel today, even though it hasn't happened yet? Sometimes we may feel an underlying sense that we are behind schedule, even when no clear schedule exists. Many people don't fear time passing slowly, they fear how quickly it seems to disappear. There are many different models or mental constructs we can use for understanding and thinking about time, but today we'll briefly look into 5 of them. The first model is called absolute time. This model is often associated with Isaac Newton and views time as an independent, unchanging force that flows at a constant rate regardless of any external physical objects or motions. Think of this as a single rigid backdrop for all events in the universe, or as if time moves at a continual speed along one line from the start of time to the end. But not everyone agreed with this rigid view of time. The next model is called relational time. This idea is linked with Leibniz and Aristotle, who argued that time is not independent of events, but rather defined by the relationship between those events. In this view, time is just an order of succession, a before and after relation between events. If we think of absolute time as a straight line, then relational time could be thought of more as a chain, where the line is infinitely divided and each point represents a single event. Time is the structure that links those events together. In this view, without events, time does not exist. Up until now, time has behaved predictably, but this next model breaks that assumption entirely. The third model is called relative time, which was named in reference to Albert Einstein's theory of relativity. Unlike absolute time, which always remains the same, relative time dictates that time is not constant, but instead is dependent on the motion of the observer and the strength of gravity. Time runs slower near high gravity or high velocity, which means that clocks in different places will not necessarily agree with each other. Instead of a straight, constant line or chain, relative time is a line that bends and curves depending on each observer's velocity and gravity. The fourth model is known as cyclical time, which views the passage of time as a continuous loop of events. This may explain why we experience déjà vu. The fourth model is known as cyclical time, which views the passage of time as a continuous loop of events. This may explain why we experience déjà vu. It was notably proposed by Nietzsche, but is also prominent in many ancient Eastern philosophies such as Buddhism and Hinduism. This model views time as a repeating, non-linear pattern of cycles, rather than a straight line with a definitive beginning and end. Some examples of these cycles would include day and night, the seasons, the lunar phases, and the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. At this point, you might be wondering why any of this matters to you, and that question is exactly where this becomes relevant. Unlike the first 4 models we've gone through to conceptualize time so far, the 5th model shifts focus from time as an external physical force of the universe, and more to how time is personally experienced. This model is called subjective time, because when time stops being something out there in the universe, and becomes something experienced inside us, it may begin to explain why time can feel like the source of so much suffering. Subjective time, also referred to as chronoception, is the personal internal experience of time's duration and passage, which frequently diverges from objective clock-measured time. Put simply, it is the clock in your head that doesn't always match the clock that's on the wall. Our experience of time could be considered a construct of human perception and consciousness rather than a fundamental feature of the physical world. Influenced by our emotions, memory, and attention, time is experienced as accelerating or decelerating. As Einstein once said, put your hand on a hot stove for a minute and it seems like an hour. Sit with a pretty girl for an hour, it seems like a minute. Subjective time is our own personal sense of time, but unlike our other senses, our brains don't actually have a single time sensor. We have tongues to sense tastes and eyes for sensing light, but there isn't a specific isolated organ that is dedicated to sensing time. Instead, time perception is managed by a highly distributed system in the brain that integrates cues from all throughout the body, simultaneously, and calculates time based on how much information is being processed. Because this internal sense of time is calculated rather than directly sensed, it is highly sensitive to context. Let's take a look at just 3 different contexts so that we can better understand how our experience of time can be altered by our emotions, memory, and attention. In life-threatening situations, the fear center of the brain, called the amygdala, goes into overdrive and forces the brain to record memories with much higher resolution than normal. This is why some people report that everything seemed to move in during a car crash, because there is so much more footage of those few seconds that the brain interprets the event as having lasted much longer than it did. When you experience something new, your brain records denser, richer memories, so if you think back, your brain sees a larger file size and assumes the event lasted a long time. If your day is exactly the same every day, then your brain will compress this data to save space. So if you think back after a year of doing the same routine, there is very little data, so the year will feel like it disappeared. This is the reason a holiday can paradoxically feel both long while you're there, but also feel like it flew by when you get home. Now imagine a bucket catching drops of water. If you pay attention to the bucket, you will see every drop. These drops represent your internal flow of time, or the ticking of a mental clock. If you were distracted, you miss the ticking. In a state of boredom, you become hyper-focused on the flow of time and notice every tick. This makes the interval between each tick feel agonizingly long. When you are fully engaged and enter a flow state, your attention is directed entirely outward, so you stop focusing on the ticks and suddenly hours have passed in what felt like minutes. In all cases, the clock on the wall has not changed, only the way our minds perceive it. From this construct of time, philosophers like Martin Heidegger argue that humans don't just exist within time, our very being is time. We are shaped by what has already happened and directed by what we believe is still to come. Memory pulls us backward, expectation pulls us forward, and somewhere between those forces, we try to live. But this forward pull is where something important happens. If our experience of time is constructed through attention and anticipation, then the future does not simply arrive when it arrives, it begins affecting us now. Outcomes we cannot control begin shaping our mood, behavior, and perception long before they are real. This is where the prison forms, not from clocks, calendars, or seconds ticking away, but from becoming psychologically confined by potential futures that have not yet happened. Attention leaves the present and sits behind bars constructed from expectation. The moment we actually inhabit becomes secondary to one that exists only as simulation. If you don't want time as your enemy and working against you, then understanding how we relate to tomorrow becomes critical. Because the future is not something we enter, it is something we mentally rehearse, fear, and suffer through in advance. If you don't recognize this, you may spend your life fighting problems that haven't happened yet, while the only moment you can actually live quietly slips away. Thinking about the future isn't inherently harmful. In fact, it's one of our most useful cognitive tools. But like many tools, it can be more detrimental than beneficial if not used correctly. Many of the problems that we attribute to our lives are often not reactions to our current reality, but to imagined futures. They are projections, predictions, and possibilities that exist only in the mind. When we experience fear, anxiety, dread, pressure, or regret about what might happen, these are not responses to time passing, but to the stories we tell ourselves about what we believe the future holds and where we should be when it arrives. We can use the future to better orient and align ourselves to the present, but if our focus is always to what comes next, then we will inevitably suffer. I want you to pause for a moment and begin to think of the biggest problem that you're currently experiencing in your life. This will likely be different for everyone, so just think of whatever problem feels the most relevant for you. This could relate to a business situation, a financial issue, a relationship, or it could even be that math test you have on Monday that you still haven't studied for. Whatever this is for you, just ask yourself, when is this a problem? When does this problem really cause impact? What we believe is a problem for us right now is often just an emotionally confronting potential problem for a future version of ourselves. But what we can forget is that this mental construct of ourselves that is about to experience such an unpleasant and negative experience as a consequence of these problems does not actually exist yet, and may never exist. The emotional intensity of these perceived problems can make us lose sight of a simple but powerful truth. Every moment of your life is spent in one place. That place is called here. And if you ever truly ask yourself what time it is, there will only ever be one true answer. And breathe. Earlier in the video, we said we'd come back to discuss the issue of skepticism soon. And look what time it is. When Descartes came upon this idea, he didn't simply reject it to avoid facing uncertainty, nor did he accept that nothing can be known. Instead, he used these principles as a tool to look for something that could not be doubted. He realized that even if he was to doubt everything, was deceived by his senses, or was somehow tricked by an evil demon, he could not doubt his own existence, because there must be a thinker doing the doubting in the first place. The very act of thinking proves the existence of a consciousness behind those thoughts. Cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. If I am doubting, I am thinking. If I am thinking, I must exist. Certainty is only located in the act of awareness itself. Descartes established that existence is confirmed through our present cognition, not through memory, prediction, or belief. Because we cannot think in the past, we cannot think in the future, thinking only happens now. Therefore, the cogito is inherently rooted in the present. The only thing we cannot doubt is that we are thinking. That thinking never happens yesterday or tomorrow, it only happens in the present. All things outside of this moment are projections of mental constructs. Mental constructs require stored memory, symbolic processing, and categorization. Immediate sensation exists before these processes complete, which means you can think about reality later, but you can only ever experience it now. Our mental models operate on memories of the past, predictions about the future, and abstraction of concepts, but the present moment is pre-constructive. It's the raw input stream. Before categorization, comparison, interpretation, or narrative, there is just immediate experience. Just feel the ground beneath you and listen to the noises around you. Feel your breath, and let yourself let go of any tension you're holding onto right now. The idea of past and future themselves are mental constructs. They are memory models and prediction models, but now is not modeled, it is lived. Even if our models are constructed, even if our perceptions are uncertain, the act of experiencing this moment remains undeniable. Memory reconstruction happens now. Future simulations happens now. Emotion happens now. Decision happens now. Even when we think about yesterday and tomorrow, all mental processing occurs in the present neural moment. The present is not one point in time, It is the only place cognition can exist. Having an authentic experience occurs through engagement with the present, not passive drifting through projected futures. Our being is enacted moment to moment, not archived in memory or stored in possibility. We cannot act on past states or future states. We can only adjust current input variables and our current behavior. So our freedom from time's constraints can only exist in the present moment. The brain has limited processing bandwidth. If too much is allocated to regret, anticipation, comparison, and so on, then sensory richness collapses and subjective life density shrinks, meaning presence increases perceived life duration and richness. More presence leads to clearer decision making, reduced anticipatory stress, richer experiential density, increased perceived life length, and greater behavioral agency. Time did not imprison us. Our relationship to our models of it did. You don't need to find the present moment. You never left it. Only your attention wandered. Our entire lives, childhood, yesterday, tomorrow, will always be experienced as a sequence of present moments, which means we never actually live in the past or future. We only live here. You don't just remember the past, you rehearse it. And rehearsal maintains identity continuity. Many people aren't overwhelmed by what they must do, they're overwhelmed by who they believe they must continue being. You are allowed to outgrow the person your past required you to be. Busyness often sustains yesterday's identity rather than serving today's reality. People stay busy to avoid uncertainty, existential quiet, and the demand for self-redefinition. Letting go means loosening familiar self-definitions, releasing validation structures, tolerating uncertainty, and facing narrative silence. Freedom without the support of an identity construct can feel destabilizing. But letting go doesn't erase our responsibilities, goals, or effort. It removes narrative-driven pressure, mental preoccupation, and self-comparison loops. Many suffering loops come from constructs about who we are, where we should be, and what time means for us. These are narrative masks. But beneath them, the present moment does not demand identity performance. It only demands presence. But presence doesn't reduce action, it clarifies it. Unhealthy fixations on the past consumes working memory, emotional regulation capacity, and decision clarity. In other words, letting go literally improves mental function. Our identities are sustained through narrative continuity, and those narratives can be rewritten. The present moment allows for that authorship. When you are no longer worn out by holding on to yesterday, you'll have strength to meet today differently. You weren't truly busy with life, you've been busy maintaining continuity with yesterday. Every story has a narrative structure. The who, where, when, what, why, and how. This includes your story. The who is you. The where is here. The when is now. What you do next, how and why you do it are your choices to make. You are the author of your own story. You have the choice at any given moment to let go of the old versions of yourself that no longer serve you and build a new mental construct. Existence unfolds moment to moments. Constructs can guide, but do not define. Time is experienced, not inhabited. You haven't escaped time. You haven't defeated uncertainty. You haven't dissolved constructs, but hopefully you've learned where to stand among them. The past is history. The future is a mystery. But the now is a gift. And that is why it is called the present. Thank you for watching and stay blessed.
Right now! Right now! Right now!